Yamunadiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Vasudevaya Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottama Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tado Jayamudiraye Nasta Prageshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavata Uttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naistaki. See the translations together. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, supermost, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of life, unto Srila Vyasa. By regular attendance in classes of the Bhagavatam, and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all the struggles of the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service to the personality of God, whose praise she chants in songs, is established in the sight. All right. So we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 28. I believe we're going to do verses 20 to 33. Focus on verse 30, is it? 30 or 31, one of those verses. All right. So yeah, in this section of the Bhagavatam, the chapter is titled Kapil Dev's Instructions on Devotional Service. And over here in these specific verses, Kapil Dev specifically focuses on how one should look at the deities actually. How do you look at deities of Krishna? So it's like a whole detailed process of looking from the feet and going by limb and so forth. And it's a very personal approach, to the deity. Yeah. All right. Let's read the first verse. Text 20. In fixing his mind on the eternal forms of the Lord, the yogi should not take a collective view of all his limbs, but should fix the mind on each individual limb of the Lord.
The devotee should first concentrate his mind on the Lord's lotus feet, which are adorned with the marks of thunderbolt, a goat, a banner, and the lotus. The splendor of their beautiful ruby nails resembles the orb of the moon and dispels the thick gloom of one's heart.
So on the feet, what are the marks on the feet? What's that? Yeah, lotus. What else? Banner. What else? Thunderbolt, and one more. Goad. Goad. What is a goad again? It's like for poking, right? yeah. So Krishna has these many markings. Let's see the purport for this one. The Mayavadi says that because one is unable to fix his mind on the impersonal existence of the absolute truth, one can imagine any form he likes and fix his mind on that imaginary form. But such a process is not recommended here. Imagination is always imagination. Whole statement. Imagination is always imagination and results only in further imagination. So it's like speculation. It's like, or as they say in America, BS is only BS and only creates further BS. So pretty much. Bless you. That's pretty much what Prabhupada's saying. It's like it's your speculation, and speculation is speculation, BS, and it only results in more speculation. A concrete description of the eternal form of the Lord is given here. Of course, in Vedic Dharma, even bullshit is auspicious. So a concrete description of the eternal form of the Lord is given here. The Lord's soul is depicted, soul as in S-O-L-E, soul is depicted with distinctive lines resembling a thunderbolt, a flag, a lotus flower, and a goat. The luster of his toenails, which are brilliantly prominent, resembles the light of the moon. If a yogi looks upon the marks of the Lord's soul and on the blazing brilliance of his nails, then he can be freed from the darkness of ignorance and material existence. So if a yogi looks upon the marks of the Lord's soul and on the blazing brilliance of his nails, then he can be freed from the darkness of ignorance and material existence. This liberation is not achieved by mental speculation and by seeing the light emanating from the lustrous toenails of the Lord. But by seeing the light emanating from the lustrous toenails of the Lord. In other words, one has to fix his mind first on the lotus feet of the Lord if he wants to be freed from the darkness of ignorance and material existence. So yeah. So any thoughts or comments on this one short purport before we go ahead? Toenails? At the regular people's toenails? Then you go. Then that's when you gotta call the tow truck. Like, yeah, when you it just makes, yeah, when you focus on the object of your senses, then you just become that. Do you mind putting that down? That thing leaning on the wall. It's gonna distract me the whole time. Um, but yeah, I just put it down on the floor. Double more cushion for you. But yeah, it's like you focus on the object of your senses in this material world, then you just stay here. You focus on Krishna's toenails, you're back to Krishna. But yeah, yes, yeah.
It goes to show that it's not based upon how much you know or the amount of Vedic information content that you're carrying, even about bhakti. It's the devotion that you show in simply giving your attention to the Supreme Lord.
Yeah.
And this even goes for hearing the Shastra. Of course, we do study too, but the simplicity of giving one's rapt attention to the sound vibration.
Yeah, because even in Lord Chaitanya's times, there's a famous story of him meeting this one devotee in South India, and this devotee, he would read the Bhagavad Gita every day and just cry, and others would just laugh at him because he held the Gita upside down. He was illiterate, so he couldn't actually read per se. And so Lord Chaitanya asked him, I said, why do you read the Gita every day and everybody laughs at you? And he said, you hold it upside down actually. And so the devotee said that, oh, my spiritual master said that, I should read the Gita every day. And so I do that to keep my promise to him. And when I read the Gita, I think of Krishna as Partha Sarthi, as the driver of Partha, Arjuna, the chariot driver. And when I think of Krishna on the battlefield covered with all dust, and then I just get choked up with emotion that Krishna is so kind, willing to do service to his own devotees. So I start crying. So at that point, Lord Chaitanya actually showed him the Parthasarthi form. And so it just goes to show by Lord Chaitanya's example that, yeah, to that point that one need not be a great scholar. Actually, one can be an illiterate Actually, Karkashodas Babaji, Bhaktisiddhanta's guru, he was for all purposes, he was illiterate. Actually, couldn't read or write, but he knew he knew the conclusions of the Vedas, and he knew Krishna. And on the contrary, Bhaktisiddhanta, by that time when he got initiation from Gorkashore, he was already a scholar. If you read his biography, it talks about how he would debate with people and they would faint. He was that strong in debate. So it wasn't just scriptures. He was just really good in debate as well. And so I believe at that point he had also written the book on astrology, Surya Siddhanta, or astronomy, I think, one of those, or both maybe, which is still used for that purpose in India. So he was just such a great scholar, but he took initiation from somebody who can read or write. And because he knew that Gorkashore Das Babaji was a great devotee. And so it just goes to show that it does not depend on our intellect. It actually depends on our heart. If we are able to surrender to Krishna and really, take shelter of Krishna's, just even his toenails. And so the yogis who might have, the topmost yogi actually focuses on Krishna's just some deities and focuses for a long time on Krishna's feet, because that really is what really gets us detached from this material world. On our own we really can't do it. We can't. There's only so many things we can do, and there are many things that can help us for sure. But if you look at the bigger picture, it's really Krishna in the heart who is going to really cut those knots of ignorance and cut those those deep knots in our hearts.
I've always wondered
So I've always wondered why is the focus on the feet rather than like their face, their personal face that we want to look at?
Yeah. For one, when you really want to take shelter of somebody, it's like you really you'll just you just take shelter of their feet. That's like their lowest point. And it's kind of just a full surrender. It's like you really just going down for their feet. Normally that's the idea. So with Krishna also, it's not that we just look at his face directly, but you start off, and it's going to talk about it. Like you start off with the feet, and it's just a sign of this full surrender, basically. Like put yourself at your feet. There's nothing more of a sign of surrender. Even in this world, you'll see like people, somebody wants to surrender and just put themselves. I don't know if that's the case in the West, but at least in India, that's the idea. You put yourself at someone's feet. It's total surrender, independence. So normally that's why there's a lot of focus on Krishna's feet. Any other thoughts on that? Yeah. Yes.
Bhakti Maharaj explains that energy of the person is concentrated in their hands and feet. So when the guru gives blessings, he can touch your head with his hand. So that's when energy is, and also the feet. That's why some devotees like to really avoid somebody's grabbing their feet, because energy is concentrated in those two things.
What else? Sorry.
that Krishna's lotus feet, they represent more than any other part of his transcendental body. They represent the devotional service. And this is the place where all the devotees are found, at his feet. So devotional service in a mood of servant of the servant, what they represent. Serving devotees is always pleasing to Krishna. So once we learn that, then we can raise our view up slowly. But without serving devotees, or learning how to serve devotees, we can't really serve Krishna.
Makes me think that also the cantos of the Srimad Bhagavatam, the first canto is supposed to be the feet, right? So you start off with the feet. You start with the first canto and go on. And which one is what does the 10th canto represent as far as Krishna is concerned? The face, but specifically, I think the smile. Krishna's smile. So before we get there, we go to the various cantos. There's a whole description. There's the feet, there's the thighs, and so forth. All right. Any other comments before we go ahead to the translations? Okay. 22.
Lord Shiva becomes all the more blessed by bearing on his head the holy waters of the Ganges, which has its source in the water that washed the Lord's lotus feet. The Lord's feet act like thunderbolts hurled to shatter the mountain of sin stored in the mind of the meditating devotee. One should therefore meditate on the lotus feet of the Lord for a long time.
Oh yeah, that's the confirmed. Say one should therefore meditate on lotus feet of the Lord for a long time. Yeah, because the thunderbolts howled to shatter the mountain of sin stored in the mind of the meditating devotee. All right, go ahead. Next verse. There you go, Bruce. All right, go ahead.
He should fix in his heart the activities of Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune, who is worshipped by all demigods and is the mother of the Supreme Person. She can always be found massaging the legs and thighs of the Transcendental Lord, very carefully serving him in this way.
Next, the yogi should fix his mind in meditation on the personality of Godhead's thighs, the storehouse of all energy. The Lord's thighs are whitish blue, like the luster of the linseed flower, and appear most graceful when the Lord is carried on the shoulders of Garuda. Also, the yogi should contemplate his rounded hips, which are encircled by a girdle that rests on the exquisite yellow silk cloth that extends down to his ankles.
The yogi should then meditate on his moon-like navel in the center of his abdomen from his navel, which is the foundation of the entire universe, sprang the lotus stem containing all the different planetary systems. The lotus is the residence of Brahma, the first created being. In the way the yogi should concentrate his mind on the Lord's nipples, which resemble a pair of most exquisite emeralds and which appear whitest because of the rays of the milk white pearl necklace adorning his chest.
The yogi should then meditate on the chest of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the abode of Goddess Mahalakshmi. The Lord's chest is the source of all transcendental pleasure for the mind and full satisfaction for the eyes. The yogi should then imprint on his mind the neck of the Personality of Godhead, who is adored by the entire universe. The neck of the Lord serves to enhance the beauty of the Kaustubha gem, which hangs on his chest.
The yogi should further meditate upon the Lord's forearms, which are the source of all the powers of the demigods who control the various functions of material nature. Then the yogi should concentrate on the polished ornaments, which are burnished by Mount Mandara as it revolved. He should also dully contemplate the Lord's discus, the Sudarshana chakra, which contains 1,000 spokes and a dazzling luster, as well as the conch, which looks like a swan in his lotus stone.
Yogi should meditate upon his club, which is named Kumudaki and is very dear to him. This club smashes the demons who are always inimical soldiers and is smeared with their blood. One should also concentrate on the nice garland on the neck of the Lord, which is always surrounded by bumblebees. The nice buzzing sound, and one should meditate upon the pearl necklace on the Lord's neck, which is considered to represent the pure living entities who are always engaged in his service.
The yogi should then meditate on the lotus-like countenance of the Lord, who presents his different forms in this world out of compassion for the anxious devotees. His nose is prominent, and his crystal clear cheeks are illuminated by the oscillation of his glittering alligator-shaped earrings.
Go Gators.
The yogi then meditates upon the beautiful face of the Lord,
which is adorned with curly hair and decorated by lotus-like eyes and dancing eyebrows. A lotus surrounded by swarming bees and a pair of swimming fish will be put to shame by its elegance.
The yogis should contemplate with full devotion the compassionate glances frequently cast by the Lord's eyes, for they soothe the most fearful threefold agonies of his devotees. His glances, accompanied by loving smiles, are full of abundant grace.
A yogi should similarly meditate on the most benevolent smile of Lord Sri Hari, a smile which, for all those who bow to him, dries away the ocean of tears caused by intense grief. The yogi should also meditate on the Lord's arched eyebrows, which are manifested by his internal potency, in order to charm the sex god for the good of the sages.
Expressed with devotion steeped in love and affection, the yogi should meditate within the core of his heart upon the laughter of Lord Vishnu. The laughter of Vishnu is so captivating that it can be easily meditated upon. When the Supreme Lord is laughing, one can see his small teeth, which resemble jasmine buds, rendered rosy by the splendor of his lips. Once devoting his mind to this, the yogi should no longer desire to see anything else. Let's go to verse 30. It's 30, right? Today. Yatri Niketam Alibi Parishevamana Bhutya Swaya Kutila Kuntala Vrinda Justa Meena Dvaya Shayamatikshi Padabjanitra Dhyayena Mano Mayam Matandrita Ulasadbru Yatri Niketam Alibi Parisevamana Bhutya Swaya Kutila Kuntala Vrinda Justa Meena Dvaya Shayamadikshi Padabjanetra Jayen Mano Ayamatantrita Ullasadru Yatri Niketam Alibi Parisevamana Bhutya Swaya Kutila Kundala Vrinda Justa Meena Dvaya Sayamadikshi Padabjanetra Jayen Manomaya Matandrita Ullasadru. Right? Check. Yatri Niketa Malibi Praishevyamana Buddha Swaya Kutila Kuntala Vrinda Justa Meena Dvaya Shrayamadikshi Padabjanetra Jayen Manomaya Matandrita Ullasadru Yatri Niketa Malibi Parisevamana Bhutya Saya Kutila Kuntala Vrinda Justa Meena Dvaya Sayamabhikshita Pabjanetra Nayen Manomaya Matan Betanul Sadru. Let's do the word to word together. Yet, which face of the Lord, Sri Niketana, the lotus, Alibi by peace, by his Savior Mana, surrounded. Bhutya by elegance, Swaya, its, Pratila, Karli, Kuntala, affair, Vrinda by a multitude, Jishtam, atoned, Meena, a fish, Dvaya, affair, Ashayam, telling, Adikshipat, prediction, Abja, lotus, Netra, having eyes, Dhayet, formed in the mind, Atandita, attentive, Ulasat, dancing, Ru, having eyes. Let's do a translation together. The yogi then meditates upon the beautiful face of the Lord, which is adorned with curly hair and decorated by lotus-like eyes, dancing everywhere. The Lord is surrounded by swarming bees and a pair of swimming fish, who put to shame by its elegance. I'd like to read the purport.
One important statement here is Dhyayan Manomayan. Manomayam is not imagination. Personalists think that the yogi can imagine any form he likes, but as stated here, the yogi must meditate upon the form of the Lord, which is experienced by devotees. Devotees never imagine a form of the Lord. They are not satisfied by something imaginary. The Lord has different eternal forms. Each devotee likes a particular form and thus engages himself in the service of the Lord by worshipping that form. The Lord's form is depicted in different ways according to scriptures. As already discussed, there are 8 kinds of representations of the original form of the Lord. These representations can be produced by the use of clay, stone, wood, paint, sand, etc., depending upon the resources of the devotee. Manomayam is a carving of the form of the Lord within the mind. This is included as one of the 8 different carvings of the form of the Lord. It is not imagination. Meditation on the actual form of the Lord may be manifested in different manners, but one should not conclude that one has to imagine a form. There are 2 comparisons in this verse. First, the Lord's face is compared to a lotus, and then his black hair is compared to humming bees swarming around the lotus, and his 2 eyes are compared to 2 fish swimming about. The lotus flower on the water is very beautiful when surrounded by humming bees and fish. The Lord's face is self-sufficient and complete. His beauty defies the natural beauty of the lotus.
So yeah, Prabhupada used to say that we know who is God, we know where God lives, we know his address, we know the role he lives on. So it's like all these descriptions are given in the scriptures. So yeah, what does Krishna look like? What does he do? His activities, and all those things are there in the scriptures, in the Bhagavatam and other texts that one can really put their mind to it, because that's really what delivers us. I mean, mantra for the matter. Man is mind and tra means to deliver. So mantra is to deliver your mind. It's a mantra. And so in the same way, deities are often a big, especially in the West, it's like there's, in the, what's it called, the Abrahamic faiths, the idea of idol worship is really, it's like, no, that's what you don't do. That's pretty much how those 2 main religions came up, Islam and Christianity, because they were like, no, these people are worshiping false gods, idols. And so we're not going to do that, worship God. And Judaism has similar ideas, if not. Judaism can be actually a little more on the impersonal side, but when you talk of form, actually, you see they don't even want to. Even there's restrictions on like writing the name of God. Like, and sometimes you see like you'll see G-D, can't even say God. And the idea is that in Judaism, at least, the idea is that the name of God is so elevated that you just can't say it out loud all the time. That's the idea. And so and those restrictions against idol worship are just
kind of saying God's name in vain is there because actually God is, God is God, and it's such a high thing, and you just can't just imagine something. So it's not that so then the conclusion oftentimes goes like, well, that means like God has no form, or God has, you can't just have a face to God, And then the question arises, well, we have a face. Nishta has a face. Even Nate has a face. So it's like if we have faces, like how could God not have one? Like how is it? Like how could God not have something that us common beings and common Americans and Indians and Belarusians? No, you're American. Yeah, all of us have it, and God does not have it. So Prabhupada often talks about it, like if we have a form, how could God not have it? And actually, even in Islam, there's descriptions in the Quran. It talks about how with God it's created with his two hands and so forth. So there was a devotee. He used to be an Ayurvedic practitioner in Israel, and he used to get all kinds of clients, for health treatments. And one lady was Muslim, and she went to him, and she literally shouldn't say anything, but it's easy to spot a devotee. It's like devotees are unique, and so she could tell like, oh, there's something different here. Of course, Ayurveda, but still, And she started asking questions, and in Israel, you don't just go out and preach it to the Muslims, all gung ho. You just kind of want to keep a little low profile. It's a little heated. The atmosphere is quite heated over there. So you just, devotee would say a few things. And then she asked asking more and more questions. And she said, I always thought about it. How is it that there's descriptions of God in the Quran, but at the same time, they focus so much on God having no form and so forth. So she would actually went back, started challenging her, her, whatever they call the Muslim priests. And, like, God must have a form. And he's like, can you relax a bit? I want to live in this country. So yeah, so we're lucky here in America. We can just go out and preach and and chant Hare Krishna and share the text. But the point is that these religions that came much later, the Vedic traditions, being Sanatan Dharma is eternal religion. There's traditions going on forever, and the Bhagavad Puranas and the various texts are actually quite old. And so these religions that came later, they came in reaction to basically people worshiping false gods and idols. And so there was a heavy emphasis on not worshiping idols. So then the question arises, what is the difference between idol worship and deity worship? And so idol worship is something where you just, worship, as Prabhupada says, is imagination. That's pretty good point.
This came up in the early years of the Christian church, because they would say that there's a difference between an idol, which is when you make a form of something that isn't really God, and an icon. And so in the early church, they had the idea of the icon, that the icon is actually the icon of God is non-different from God, just like we'd have. And that by gazing upon that form, one actually receives grace. And this was one of the things that really spurred on Islam, because they wanted to return to the iconoclast. But in the early church, iconoclasm, or the destruction of images of God, was condemned as a heresy, actually.
That's good. Yeah. Good.
I thought about this before, and basically the conclusion that I came to, with one of the differences being, is that the idol is made up, and the deity has a description in the scriptures. It's an actual
exactly.
description.
Yeah, and especially like with our Krishna launch, and recently with our, we're asking for more donations. So everyone and their brothers coming out of the woodwork to criticize the Hare Krishnas online.
They don't come and say anything else to our face, but online they're like, this is a cult and this and that, and they will take a, don't go eat lunch, they will convert you and take all your money. I'm like, whose money did we take, man? Next time we take your money. So Nate, take all your money. I wish we did. I'm just kidding. It's like, whose money? So it's just so ridiculous, just so driven with from ignorance. And the idea of a cult, and there are cults out there in this world for sure. And the idea of as a cult is like, there's a, especially in a negative sense. In a positive sense, normally cult just means, there's a central figure or personality or deity or anything, and everything revolves around them. But in a negative sense, people are manipulated, they're they're asked to give all their money. For example, what's it called, Scientology, they sell you a lot of books, like a lot, like not only like initially, but like when as you gotta go to the next level, next level, next level. It's just, there was a story, Kalaganpur often mentions, there's this lady who was her, some family members were devotees, so they were telling us that she was a Scientologist, and they would keep coming to her all the time, like, this book, you gotta go to the next level, next level. So she said, okay, yeah, sure, please come on in. She was like, here, let's go to this room over here where I keep all the books. And she opened this room, and it was packed with their books. And she goes, please tell me where else I can store it, because there is no space left, for all these books that you have sold me over the years. But yeah, it's just, there are cults out there for sure. And normally I just, bona fide theology, or there's no philosophy really. It's mostly around a person. And there's a lot of surrender expected from people for long periods of time, including their time, energy, and money, and so forth. So normally that, those kind of things, people are manipulated. There's a lot of guilt involved. And so normally those are cultish tendencies. I mean, can they exist in any religion? Sure, they can be in any religion. And for a matter of fact, it was in the Hare Krishna religion also. It just depends on how people are treated, basically. And so it can be there, but the question is, is it like, what can be done so that it's not there, basically? And so the idea is that people want to actually practice Krishna consciousness or God consciousness, and that's what the book, like these verses, are talking about. The yogi doesn't have to, wake up for Mangalarti at 6 a.m. The yogi wants to do this, The yogi wants to be there, look at Krishna, because the yogi understands that when I do this, firstly, it's the best thing ever. And secondly, like, actually, this is how I really get detached from the various misgivings in my heart. This is how I can really clean my heart. So when you look at the deities and you pray to the deities, and that's the thing, that's the thing about idol worship, and like, especially in the West, there's so much. I'm like, oh, these false gods, these idols, they worship idols. That's another part of criticism about the devotees, and it's like, the question is, if God can be in any form, or like or people say, well, God is everywhere, whatever. Well, why can't God incarnate as deities? Why can't God present themselves in that approachable form? Because that's what the scriptures talks about, like that Krishna wants to be appreciated by his devotees. And we don't necessarily have the senses to see God in his, in his spiritual form. So Krishna comes in these various, as deities, as Archa Vigraha. Archa means one who's worshipped, and Vigraha is a deity. Archa Vigraha, incarnation, so that we can actually see, and it can be out of wood, metal, there's different different things that can be out of, I forget all the different ones. Even sand, I think, was it? Pixels? Yeah, yeah. Yeah. But yeah, these different ways Krishna can actually manifest. And it's like, the question is, why not? Why can't he? Why limit him to just saying like, no, he cannot do that. Yeah. And so that's the idea of deities. Yes, bro.
I was going to say, as I've been here and learning what deities are and stuff, the way I see it is like idol worship is more like drugs, or it's
Yeah.
like popular people like Taylor Swift and So if these characters where people like will get pictures of them and they'll literally worship them, like there's a lot of teenagers these days that worship Taylor Swift. You know,
Donald Trump.
and Donald Trump. You know, a lot of people they put these people on high pedestals, and so I feel like that's like what an idol is.
Yeah.
And then from what I'm understanding from being here is the deity is a representation of God that is actually, you know, like you said, bona fide. So it's something we can actually get from the text. And so then that, because it was coming from like a Christian background, you know, I mean, they do tell us that, you know, the figures and such is idol worship. But then it makes me realize that a lot of Christians, they're worshiping idols and they don't realize it. You know what I mean? The people I used to be friends with and stuff, they're worshiping all these idols and stuff too. So yeah.
Thanks for sharing the point. And makes me think of how Prabhupada was asked this question, what is true humility? And Prabhupada said true humility means that you don't depend on your bank balance or your job or anything else for that matter. True humility means that you depend on Krishna. So that basically true humility means that you don't have these various idols. You know, one can have money as an idol, worship money, worship your job, your boss, your career. Yeah, you can worship your town president, that's fine. But yeah, so you can have these various idols in your life, and life will just idle away. That's good. Did you have a point, Rosiga? Did you have one?
Yeah, just this idea that an idol being anything that isn't God, or we put our attention on something other than God, and but if God can be represented in any form, then certainly we can worship in that way.
Yeah, and you know, sorry, go ahead.
But that the idol is anything that's not God.
Yeah.
And otherwise, anything that represents God as He is, of course. Why shouldn't we?
Yeah. And you know, and then we're able to worship God, and then we're able to see other things also in respect to God. So then, in that sense, and everything becomes becomes spiritual in that sense. Actually, you know, this is Krishna's temple. You know, I think Prabhupada once said about somebody asked if the walls can we think them as Balaram because they're supporting, you know, the structure. Prabhupada said yes. You know, you can think of them like that. So you can think of everything as actually Krishna's expansion. Did you have a point, bro? Adishan, bro?
You know, when I was growing up, there was a devotee at the temple, and he one time was struggling to explain this new lady that came to the temple about the deities. She was really struggling with it, and he gave her a piece of papers. He said, "Okay, just tear it apart. You should pour it." He pulled $100. He said, "Okay, tear this." She's like, "Are you crazy?" Yeah, but it's the same paper. He's like, "No, but it's valuable." Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's a matter, but it's the value in it. And so he also gave an example how deed is just like a mailbox.
Oh yeah, Prabhupada talks about that. Yeah, one of his very early lectures, Prabhupada talks about, you know, the U.S. mailbox where, so there's mailbox on the streets and there's the post office. You can either go to the post office, which is like, you know, going directly to God, or you can just go to one of the mailboxes. So in a sense, there's no difference. You know, you put your mail in the mailbox, it still goes, you know, it's mailed out. And so the deities, you know, that's the idea. Deities are like that. You know, it represents, you know, it's actually an incarnation of Krishna. So in that sense, there's no difference. But if you just paint a box blue and put it out on the street, put your mail in it, it's not going to go anywhere. It's going to stay there. And so yeah, the deities actually are non-different from Krishna. And so that's why they're there, so we can build our relationship. We can look at them and actually pray to them and speak to them, and you know, and many times they answer. Yeah, for sure. And yeah, one just simply has to tune in actually in that frequency, and Krishna does reveal. You know, Krishna does talk to us, and sure, and you know, does reply to our prayers in so many ways. But the thing is, you have to look at the deities as persons. So pray to them, talk to them, and be like, you know, Prabhupada talked about how he said, if you have any problems, just go to the deities and be like, dear sir, I'm yours. and I have these problems. So these problems are yours. Basically, I'm kind of paraphrasing it. So yeah, it's really, and that's why the deity worship process is there, where we also chanting and hearing for the deities, or just, there's other ways to serve the deities. All that is there, so that you develop that personal relationship with Krishna. Yeah. What else? Any thoughts, Isper?
There's also, it always shocked me how those who say Krishna, God, is everywhere, but they cannot see it. That everywhere but except in the deity.
In the deity, everywhere but.
Yeah, it always shocked me. But then there's another argument and question to have. Why so much lavish worship when there's so many hungry people?
Yeah.
Why do you build so many expensive
temples,
luxurious temples, marble, and there's like, so that way.
Yeah. And to them, I would ask, why do CEOs get millions of dollars? Why do they have big houses? Why do they have those things and not God? Why not? It's like, why not, actually? There's all the wealth in the world to feed the poor. Why don't they do it? Why doesn't somebody actually do it instead of coming to temples and, people worship God and so that's one time. But yeah, yes, bro, Jonathan, bro.
Also, if you come to the temple, you'll get fed.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to share a realization I had when I was first coming to Alachua before I came to Krishna House. Is when I was reading the Bible a lot, there's a verse that says, "Look to the Lord and His strength, and seek His face always." And I was meditating on that a lot. And I remember I'd seen Shama Sundar's face, Krishna's face, all painted up on the altar, and when the curtain was closing, and it was like the last thing I saw while the curtain closed, and I was like, yeah, that's the Lord's face. It just resonated with me. If you want to see what He looks like, all you have to do is come to Alachua Temple.
Come to New Raman Reiki. Yeah. Sige, bro.
A practical example is Srila Prabhupada in LA wanted to help the devotees, this was early on, help the devotees to develop a relationship with the Lord through the deity, and develop a relationship with the deity. So he would have them, every week he would have everybody come before the deity and basically give a report as to what they had accomplished that week for their lordships.
Yeah.
And this was for them to actually, be accountable for how they're spending their time, but also to develop a relationship with the deity. And early on, I can remember when the deities actually, they just look like statues to me. But then I read that and I thought, in order for me, I may not be able to see it now, but if I'll begin to relate to them as if they are really the Lord, then maybe my perception will change. And lo and behold, it really did. So that's a practical way where we can build up our faith, is begin to actually relate to the deities as the Supreme Lord. And it won't take long before you begin to actually perceive their reciprocation.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Mr.
For his point about reporting to the deities, that reminded me in high school in the group, we would every morning before we did anything, we just sit in a circle and we had these Panchatattva deities, and we would just be like, "My dear Panchatattva," and then you'd say I'm grateful for, I don't know, the field trip yesterday. It was small things, but it was still sweet. And then, I pray that I can make some more time to read today. But it's just the small things, but they add up, and that really stuck with
me. Yeah. But all these, complaints from people of cult-like activity or worshiping idols, and it's actually are being brainwashed. Sure.
Sorry, is it better to This is a debatable question, but is it better to listen to the deities, or is it better to listen to the rules?
To the what?
To the rules.
Rules, yeah. I mean, everything comes from the scriptures. So when you say rules, I'm assuming what the scriptures talk about. So, yeah, it's better to follow that. Better to, and because then, yeah, it's debatable. The deity told me to, like, go drink some coffee, no, I'm just kidding. Or whatever. Yeah. So the way we look at it, everything has to align with this Guru, Sadhu, Shastra, the scriptures, the spiritual master, and other devotees. So it has to be in line with that as well. And yeah, the deities might inspire us to do certain service, but it has to line up also with Guru, Sadhu, Shastra. It can't just be a concoction of our imagination, basically. But yeah, if it's a particular service, Krishna is inspiring us, that's different. But still, it's good to talk to the devotees and our mentors and make sure everything's like, yeah, this may actually, it's great, makes sense. It'll actually enhance our spiritual life and not decrease it. Yeah. Oh, but yeah, one last point I wanted to make was, with people who might just be like, oh, this is just brainwashing. And Prabhupada talked about it often. There's actually a video of Gopal Krishna Maharaj with a Canadian interviewer, and he's really pushing, like, oh, you guys, the Hare Krishnas are cop-outs and they're brainwashed. And Gopal Krishna Maharaj quotes Prabhupada and he says, actually, you all need the brainwashing. Your brain needs to be a little washed so that one can worship God, and not the other way around. And so, another thing about cults is that cults are often insular, very insular. And so, I mean, for the most part here, we're not insular. We are out on campus and we meet people, we do programs, and yeah, it's nice to talk to people and share about Krishna consciousness. And so, the way we look at it, like, everybody's actually a servant of Krishna, and they just need that little spark. That little spark needs to be fanned, and so everybody's welcome and so forth. All right, but did I kind of address your question, Drew, your point? Did you have more thoughts on that question you asked about, yeah. You like what? Oh, yeah. They will be fed. Yeah. There's so much disbalance in the world is due to the lack of Krishna consciousness. So, and the temples actually contribute to the levels of knowledge or their lack of in the world. For their lack of in the world. So, it is addressing the issue and the sense of the issue. Yeah, it reminds me of one of our graduates, they went home and their parents were like, what did you do with your life for the past 1 or 2 years? You just wasted your life living at this Hare Krishna place, And so I tried to encourage that graduate and told them that, they have not done this, so they don't understand the value of it. But you have made progressive march back to Godhead that they have not made. So they don't know the value, so they won't appreciate it, of course. And that's all right. But you should understand that actually you have added a lot to your life just even by staying in the ashram for a short span of time. Most people stay for short times anyways, and but you actually make so much progress in one's personal and spiritual life. Did you have a point, Ari?
Well, I just wanted to say that the Christian church and Islam are the two biggest cults in the world, really. And a lot of people are just brainwashed when they go to these centers without even realizing it. It's far more subtle and genius in its ability to make people stuck in dogmatic ways of thinking.
We should copy.
But also, if you go on YouTube and you watch like debates between an ISKCON devotee and primarily any faith really, the ISKCON person is always so calm in presenting his point. And to me, calmness is always a sign of power, and you've tapped into some sort of truth because you don't feel the need to force. And you'll see them speak to Muslims, you'll see them speak to Christians, and like at some point in the conversation, there will be a break in the Abrahamic person, Like they're like, I can't stand that their programming is being broken down. Whereas the ISKCON devotee is kind of like waiting to get proven wrong, and it just doesn't really happen in these debates. A separate point that I had, unrelated, is we talked last week when I want to know like where Prabhupada says that the only job that's unacceptable in Kali Yuga is that of the butcher.
Well, for devotees.
For devotees.
Devotees, yes. Specifically.
So is like a mercenary, right?
Yeah.
Is that more acceptable than a butcher?
For mercenary, it's a little better because it's like, they have as even as a devotee, say, that because that's the debate, right? That's the question.
Right.
Can a devotee be a mercenary then? It's still a little better than killing innocent animals.
So killing
but
innocent
of course,
people
innocent people
for money is better.
No, it's true. Actually, real Kshatriyas are not mercenaries. Real Kshatriyas actually, fight for honor and like for protecting people. So in a sense, yeah, maybe it's true. It's not actually might not be much better actually than kill because what's the difference in killing innocent people versus killing innocent animals?
Right? Well, I'd say it's worse.
It's worse. Yeah, it's worse.
But also
at the same time, I guess the people might be able to protect themselves. Animals maybe a little less. But anyways, but it sounds they're more or less the same thing, I guess. Yeah.
And just a final point is like a butcher will kill, let's say, I don't know, however many animals in his career as a butcher, right? But let's say a Christian preacher or a Muslim imam who normalizes meat eating, right, to his huge congregation of people, indirectly is probably causing the slaughter of more animals than any butcher.
Yeah. I mean, we don't want to bash all these imams and preachers, but yeah, it does not help one's spiritual life. I was talking to last point. So late. I was talking to Nanda's mom recently, and I'm friends with her, so I was joking around, and we were just joking, and we're just joking around. So I just said, yeah, this person, they're gonna go to this hellish planet. There's this ruru worms. They're gonna eat them. And she was like, yeah. And then later in the conversation, I looked it up, and then later in the conversation, I was like, and she asked, oh, would this other person also go there? I said, no, it only happens to those who eat meat, actually, states in the book. And there was a silence. I was like, oh, it's okay. And Nanda's your daughter. You're great. So, but Nanda will pick up the slack. Anyways, if you're listening to this, Carol. All right, we're gonna end here. It's pretty late. All right. Ganta Srimad Bhagavatam ki.